Kagiso released their December PMI results a little earlier today and are saying that the index remained in largely positive territory. Here to unpack the numbers with me is Theo Force, a specialist consultant at Kagiso. Theo, thank you so much for joining me today. November reading 52.9, December 51.7. So clearly slightly softer coming to the fore, and looking at your brief here, it's all about the employment index.
Well, back to our top story, and that's, of course, Naspers' results. We're joined on the line now by CEO Chris Becker. Chris, good afternoon.
Hello, Stephen.
Chris, well, this really looks like a story of emerging markets continuing to do well despite the market downturn, because you have exposure to some fast-growing economies, and that really has paid off for you in the past year, it looks like.
Stephen, we got into them more by luck than design.
Well, you said you got into them by luck more than design, but going forward it looks like your focus really very much remains on emerging markets. You have made more acquisitions over the past year, internet company in Poland, of course you have an internet company in Russia as well. Is the focus going to remain on emerging markets going forward?
That in the South Africa of today, you can be classified as colored simply by looking colored. Is this, in point of fact, true?
Well, I can give you quite a, which may seem amusing, but rather humiliating incidents that occurred in our country when the Department of Census started reclassifying people. They hauled people of the trams in the mornings out of the bus queues and took them up to the Native Commissioner's office, and some of the tests applied to tell a man that he was not colored was trying to pass a comb through his hair, and the comb stuck. He was told, "You're a Kaffir." Other people whose noses were a bit flat were told, "You're not a colored."
What is behind the firm, continued refusal of African women to accept passes?
Well, the passes have been enforced in South Africa for a very long time amongst the men. And it has become very clear that the pass system in South Africa is the basis of forced and cheap labor. Now, to impose such a system on the African women is to create hardships. Firstly, African women will have to produce these passes on demand. If they fail to do so, they will be arrested in the streets, they will be stopped at stations, they will be stopped as they visit one another in the locations, and if they haven't got those passes, they will be immediately arrested and brought before the court. Now, African men who value their women just as any other people value their women, say what will happen to their children.
Ag, 36,5. Oor hoeveel vryheid beskik die media in Suid-Afrika?
Our policy is one which is called by an Afrikaans word apartheid. And I'm afraid that has been misunderstood so often. It could just as easily, and perhaps much better, be described as a policy of good neighborliness, accepting that there are differences between people. But while these differences exist, and you have to acknowledge them, at the same time, you can live together, aid one another, but that it can best be done when you act as good neighbors always do.
Well, we felt that it was a legal trick or we didn't know whether it was legal then, but we felt it was a piece of trickery and against the spirit of the Constitution.
But I think you're putting the standard of morals very low if you reckon that we are going to go on supporting apartheid just in order to keep our servants.
Goeienaand. Die staatspresident, meneer P.W. Botha, sê hy het besluit om 'n landwyse noodtoestand in te stel.
What is expected of us? What should we do? We should defend our country in the best possible manner.
What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do? Such a crime for a guy to spend his time at the local dance at the local county jail. At the local dance at the local county jail. What you gonna do? What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do?
Welcome to the first special report on the Truth Commission. The Commission's first hearings were held here in the East London Town Hall, and it's been a week of raw emotion.
Yes, the leadership has taken a great deal of the blame. All human beings are moral creatures.
So I interviewed Robbie Jansen about the fact that Jimmy Blue had won the Sama Award and that Robbie had been nominated for a Sama. And he had a lot of very interesting things to say. And the response from the editor was, no, this is now too controversial because now Robbie is, maybe he's dissing the Sama Awards. He said they're the Sema Su Awards, it's not a popularity contest, it's how many records you sell. But it's, for me, you know, even though maybe there was a bit of Skinner sort of involved, and it was, for me, a very entertaining story that broke from the sort of stereotypes that one has of these musicians. You know, very often what we only get are the press releases of, you know, the record labels' view of what these people are, and I was trying to humanize. I mean, I'd sort of, you know, I'd read many Robbie Jansen stories, working at the Cape Times, and Sandile Dikeni had commissioned or written a couple of stories about Robbie, and we published stories about Jimmy and these people. It was sort of like, it was old hat. I mean, there was nothing really new about these musicians. And here was the target market, and I thought, well, we could do something more interesting and creative and humanize and give a sort of more of a backyard, homegrown sense of these are real life people living in these communities with things to say, faced with real issues, and how can we break from those stereotypes that have been generated as a result of the apartheid system, where you have this division and segregation and essentially playing to a white audience. So I thought we could do something quite creative and interesting. Unfortunately, the editor, who was from Bloemfontein, had a very different view about how the world works. As far as she was concerned, there were very strict categories of people. A black person, for instance, wasn't of any interest to the target market. So no matter what a coloured musician says or does, this was a coloured target market, and a black person had no reason to be talked about in that target market.
Surely these are people who have talents and they would be looked up to by those
surely 10 years after democracy, this is a debate that one shouldn't be having in a newsroom. This is something, racial profiling, as far as I'm concerned, is a form of discrimination. And I've made allegations of racial profiling to the Human Rights Commission. I've made the allegation to the Labour Court. I complained to the manager of the VP Courant, the Nationale Pers. Complained to the manager, and his response was to schedule an evaluation meeting in which my contract and performance would be evaluated. So I sat there waving my article about Jimmy Dludu while I was now being evaluated, and they were very unhappy with my performance.
But the two things have nothing to do with each other.
I couldn't find the connection. So here's the human resources manager, the editor, and the manager of the division. And now we're talking across purposes, because I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, I'm in no circumstances am I prepared to pursue this relationship.